Okay, so one of the great things about the mind map process of coaching is it super simplifies threat identification, right? Super simplifies it, but not too much, right? As in, it tells you exactly what you need to look out for in order to spot threat, but it doesn't dumb it down so much that it kind of, it takes away from the skill of the practitioner. So in a second, we're going to kind of move into identifying threat, what it looks like, because threat is essentially just two things. It manifests in three ways, but it's essentially just two things, right? And once you actually understand what these two things are, and you know how to manipulate them, threat can disappear. Okay, if it doesn't disappear, it massively downregulates. Okay, so we're going to be covering a lot of that this afternoon. Before we do that, let's just have a look at why people need coaches. Essentially, they need coaches because people are losers, right? Your clients are losers, and you are losers, and I'm a loser, right? We're all essentially losers at some point in our lives, okay? And I don't mean losers as in you're a loser, like as in a derogatory term. They are losers by definition because they're playing a game that most of them can't win, okay? A game that you can't win immediately sets you up for losing. Because you're either winning it or you're losing it. Most of your clients are playing a game that they can't win because for some very, very simple reasons. Actually, let me just have a look at it. This is what a loser feels like. They feel unfocused, distracted, directionless, uninspired, tired, stressed, unmotivated, sad, angry, frustrated, bored, lost. How many of your clients do you think that would describe? A lot of them, right? A lot of the time we feel that way as well, right? Exactly the same thing. That is, by definition, being a loser, right? You are essentially lost. This is actually one of the reasons why we call it the MAP, the mind map process, is because quite literally we are helping people get found, right? Find their journey, find out where they are on the map. That's one part of it being the mapping process. Okay, essentially, loser. You can only feel these things when you're under threat. Right? You can only feel those things when you're under threat. Once threat disappears, you may still not have all the answers. You may still not have the clearest of directions, but you don't feel the same way about it. Okay? In the absence of threat, these things just kind of become challenges. Okay? And a lot of them, they become kind of exciting. To not know where you are at this moment in time may not be threatening. It may not be a big problem to you when you're not under threat. To not know where you are or where you're going at this moment in time when you already have ambient threat is massive and you feel lost. Right? Whenever you feel lost, by definition, you are a loser. Okay, so when you're a loser and you feel lost, you absolutely need a map. And this is why this is called the Mind Map program. Because providing a client with a map or with a map is the easiest thing in the world to do. Okay, it only takes a handful of pieces of information. Like, what is the aim of a map? What is the actual aim of a map? Like a real map. Sorry? Right, guide you to your destination, guidance. Okay, a map is a means of defining start point, end point, route, and obstacles on a journey. That's all a map is, right? Okay, most of our clients, they don't know where they're starting their journey from. Remember I said, basically the first level of truth-telling, tell the truth to yourself about yourself. If you're not telling the truth to yourself about yourself, you don't know where you are on the map at the start. Okay? Determine the end point. Most people aren't clear about what they want their end point to be. They don't know what they want their life to look like. Most don't even know what they want their bodies to look like. Most people don't have clear definitions of what they want their relationship to look like. Okay? None of these things, right? So they don't really know where they're starting. They don't really know where they're ending, which means that you can't plan the route. Okay, it's impossible to plan a route without knowing the start and end point. Has anybody here ever done navigation with a map and compass? Right, again, right, so as a soldier, right, a big part of my work was literally like we would have to manually navigate, right? Not with GPSs and stuff, with map and compass, and we'd have to find bullets and beans and all kinds of stuff hidden underground, our rations and our bullets to carry on the mission. And we might have traveled like 30, 40, 50 miles to find a cache of stuff hidden in the ground that was about this big, right? So our navigation had to be really, really hot. And it always came down to understanding exactly where you're standing at the start of an operation, exactly where you have to get to, and reading the ground along the way so that you knew what was going to come up in front of you. This part here, understanding the route and the obstacles, right? Because if you know what the obstacles are going to be on the journey, threat goes down. Threat is massive when along the journey suddenly some big thing comes up that you weren't expecting. That's when threat is massive. But when you can actually sit back before you even take step one on the journey, and you can say, okay, this is where we are, this is where we're going. Here's a bunch of stuff that I'm going to have to overcome or climb over or swim around or whatever it is across the course of this journey. It's a very, very different experience. So most of your clients don't know where they're starting from, they don't know the end point, and they can't plan the route, because you can only ever plan a route if you know start and finish. Okay, and now that means that literally everything becomes a wilderness full of threat. Can you see how that's the case for a lot of people, right? So that's the first thing. And so a map has that meaning. Second, MAP is a mastery acceleration protocol, MAP, right? The process of mastery is actually the counter to threat. Okay, mastery is the counter to threat, because what mastery is the ability to predict and reproduce a desired outcome. That's what mastery is. If you're a great martial artist, it means that you can predict the range, the speed, the whatever it is, right? The amount of force that you're putting into a shot, and you can do that over and over again down the same pathway, right? We used to do demonstrations where kind of literally would do like 50 jabs and literally just touch the end of a person's nose to show how much mastery you had. You didn't accidentally break their nose, right? You reach out. The ability to predict and reproduce an outcome is mastery. It just so happens that threat is the opposite to that, okay? Threat is the inability to predict the immediate future and the inability to produce a desired response for that environment, okay? So we'll talk about that a bit more in a second. But what we can say then is that, there we go. Mastery is the ability to create accurate predictions and responses to the environment you find yourself in, right? That is what mastery is. It also happens that safety is the exact same thing. Safety and mastery are synonymous, right? So the more mastery you gain, the more you're able to predict your immediate future, the more you're able to create the appropriate response to your environment, the safer you feel. Does that make sense? Yeah? You could flip that around then, that all threat is founded in the inability to predict your immediate future and the inability to create an appropriate response. That's all it is. So threat is just those two things. Right? Well, to me, that's absolutely fascinating, because it really simplifies the entire journey to actually taking away threat. Because here's the thing. A lot of the work that we do as coaches and trainers, we actually add to the threat, and we add to the threat massively, right? We may be able to kind of create some predictions here, but the client has just had their world turned upside down, because as soon as they walked through the door, you gave them a homework routine, an exercise routine here for at the gym. You gave them a nutrition change. You told them to take all these supplements, do all these different things. Can you see how their predictions about things have actually, it might seem really obvious to you that all you've asked them to do is some supplements and take some of these changes, but where they are right now in their life, that ambient load of stuff that you've just thrown on them is massive. Was that here? Oh, right. Right? It's a massive change. Okay, so let's look at that. Safety, the ability to predict the immediate future, plus the ability to create the appropriate response to that prediction. That's what safety is. We create so much change for our clients when they very first start with us. And if their bath, that threat bath is kind of empty, they're fine with it. They go, okay, that's fine. It's only a few more supplements and go to the gym a few times a week or whatever. If the bath is already full, if they've already got a lot of ambient threat, the smallest changes you make might be huge to them. You've just taken them out of their ability to predict and respond. Okay? So bear that in mind. We need to move away from the one-size-fits-all kind of mentality of running our I guess, like we were talking about this over the lunch break, the biggest mistake that we make as coaches is trying to see our client's threat through our eyes, because we may not be scared of it. It may not cause us much fear. It may not cause us much consternation, right? But for them, it's huge. The changes that we're asking them to make are huge compared to the life they're currently leading, right? That's safety. I just said this. Danger and threat is the inability to predict the future plus the inability to create the appropriate response. Most of your programs for a large number of your clients, I am certain, create for them the inability to predict their own futures, right? Which is what pushes their ambient threat levels up. Okay, and most of us, we don't have an appropriate response. Okay, I'm just going to put all these up at once. So, the body is always seeking homeostasis. It's always seeking this kind of legendary balance point. I say legendary because it doesn't really exist, right? It's just kind of some moot point it's always trying to move toward, but we're always in flux. Okay? All change threatens homeostasis, which means, by definition, then that all change is threat. Every time you change anything, you turn on a new tap around that bath. Okay? I'm changing your diet, there's a bit more threat. I'm changing your exercise plan, there's some. You've got to now find an extra 3 hours a week. There's another tap turned on. The more changes you make at once, the more threat you're introducing into your clients' lives. Right? And I know, like, certainly from the athlete mindset, you can sit there thinking, oh, man, does this mean we've just got to baby everyone who comes walking the door? No, it just means you've got to baby some of them. And the flip side of that is that actually you're not really babying, you're just looking after them. You're recognizing that for this person here, you've got to give them a lot less, but this one over here, you can kick their ass every time they come in, and that's exactly what they want, exactly what they need, and they're going to enjoy it. Okay? Basically, all threat can either create evolution or devolution, depending upon the levels and the strength of the organism. This is from Darwinism, right? And it's essentially what it's saying. It's another way of kind of saying survival of the fittest, right? If the threat is appropriately applied, people can meet that threat, they can evolve, they can become the next level of themselves. Okay? If the threat is inappropriately applied, you break them. And whether that be, and I'm not going to get into the realms of that, but whether that be spiritually, emotionally, physically, or whatever, right? But you end up breaking people because the change is faster than they can adapt to. Okay? Again, a lot of our clients, we have proof that for a lot of clients who are coming into the personal training and fitness realms, that the pace is too fast for them because essentially they can't keep in the race. They can't stay with it for long enough. Right? If you literally to think of your programs as being like asking people to run a race, what point do they drop out? The races are either too long for them or they're being run too fast. What about if you just slow down or shorten the distance that you're asking them to run and get them to walk it to begin with? Right? The biggest problem that we face as coaches is that we generally tend to have our clients apply our rules and our paradigms for training and our paradigms for change to our clients. We like training this way, they should like training that way. We like that level of challenge, they should like that level of challenge, and that's not true. Right? If you believe that you are a personal trainer, then the process has to be personal. And a lot of the time it's not. Okay, so all threat creates predictable reactions that can be learned and used as tools to monitor and monitor, control, and condition. Let me see. So, remember, the reptilian brain, limbic system work together to create threat response, regardless of what the threat is. Regardless, it could be a spider, it could be you on the edge of a cliff, it could be being asked to change your diet, right? It doesn't matter. If you perceive changing your diet as a massive threat to you, it doesn't matter that you're not going to die from it. Your reptilian brain is going to kick off, and threat always responded to in the same way: fight, flight, or freeze. Always. So remember, there's two triggers to threat, right? I just said to you a second: the inability to predict the immediate future, and the inability to create an appropriate response to the environment. Those are the two triggers for threat. So think about this. The more you can help your client predict their future, and one way to help them predict their future is first off to shorten their future, right? Kind of get them focusing much shorter. I'm going to speak to you a bit later about having longer-term goals. They're still relevant, but get them to focus on shorter changes and smaller changes in shorter spaces, right? The more you can help them predict their future, the less likely they are to move into these fight, flight, or freeze responses, or reactions, sorry. And it always looks like this. Really, right? Something is happening too fast. The reason for the threat is that something is happening too fast. You're asking for too much change. So when there's too much change, basically the person gets overstimulated, that threat bucket or the bath fills up, they go into fight, flight, or freeze. Unclear intent. If you're unsure of why something's being presented to you, the impact is like a threat, right? Which again, if you think about the amount of times trainers are applying just do this stuff kind of rules to people, right? Here's what I want you to do without necessarily explaining it. Not just explaining, but explaining it in terms of the client's own unique situation. This is why this is beneficial to you. Okay, and figuring out the correct pace. Too slow is also a threat for some people. Okay, like I said to you, you're going to lose 5 pounds in the next 3 years, and it's going to cost you about $7,500 to do that, based upon your monthly fees. Right, that's a huge threat. But this is basically where threat lives. It lives in these things. So you as a coach are looking at prediction and response, and you're looking at they're showing me fight, flight, or freeze. What's happening that's too quick? What's happening that's too slow? And what are they unclear about? The truth is that too fast and too slow pretty much equate to this, right? Things will feel too fast if you're unclear about the intention around them. Things will feel too slow if you're unclear about the intention around them. But for actual practical purposes, as you're working with your clients, all you're asking is, which changes here feel too fast? Think about yourself. Think about kind of your recent, you don't have to tell me about it, but in your mind, right? Think about any of your recent engagements with fear, with threat, right? Things that are holding you up. Now, see which one of those applies. Like what change feels like it's happening too quickly? Or what are you still unclear about? Or what feels far too slow? Right? You see that it really only comes down to these things. Right? And each one of these is essentially what causes the inability to predict and the inability to respond. Okay? Far more common for the greater number of clients, it's just these two boxes here. Right? Some people feel that their change is occurring too slow, but actually when you really analyze it, what you'll find is that the results are coming too slowly, but that's not necessarily the threat. The threat is usually the push to try and speed up the process of getting them. Right? So it's actually a too fast kind of problem. But look at these two areas first. In 90% of your clients, when you sit down with them and you find you're starting to uncover the threat, you'll find that the threat lives in being asked to make too many changes too quickly, or too big a change too quickly. Does that make sense? Right? Think about, right now, think about some of your clients who've been exhibiting threat recently. Right? They've been exhibiting the threat responses. Which ones of these are the ones that are coming up again and again for you guys? What's showing up? Unclear. Right? So remember, unclear intent is, like most of your clients are going to be in unclear intent anyway, right? They don't know where they are on the map to start with. They're not really clear where they're going, which means that they've got a hazy picture of what's in the middle ground. Like, how do I even get there? Because if I don't know where I am, I don't know where I'm going, I can't figure out the route. Right? What about the rest of you guys? What are you seeing coming up most? Right, in terms of results.
Yeah.
Right, but are they the same clients? Because this would be interesting. Are they the same clients that when you try and speed up the actual actions to get them there, you get more resistance when you change the process? So we'll talk later on when we come to some of the actual coaching exercises. We'll use that as an example because athletes are slightly different, but the same processes are in play.